when we say that in a short time, artificial intelligence will be equivalent to the intelligence of a human being. Do we truly understand all the capacities of a human being? Have we taken the time to reflect on whether everything we are capable of expressing in the form of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions can really be so easily reproduced? So let us reflect on this together. Let's begin by discussing the symbolic mentality, which is something fundamental for those of us who study philosophy. Most of the books we study in philosophy and literature require us to interpret them, to connect them with our own lives. They are not straightforward. They must be interpreted, and a certain level of symbolism needs grasping. But symbolism is not just about reading a book. It's about understanding the very messages of life, which, whether in our awakened, conscious state or in our dream state, when we are asleep, often present us with symbols. And we also need a certain depth in order to decode these symbols. Let's begin with a brief exploration, first of the symbolic mindset, and then we'll move on to other attributes, also connecting them to artificial intelligence. The word symbol comes from the Greek symbolos, which means to hurl, to throw together, to bring together, or something along those lines. To grasp this meaning, we need to understand Plato's theory of ideas. Plato says that there is a realm in nature where all ideas exist. It is what, in the East, is called Mahav cosmic mind, the mind of God. All the ideas that will one day take form and become beings in the world will become objects in the world. Everything exists within this realm of ideas. And for something to exist in the realm of ideas and then come into the world, it is as if it casts its shadow into the world. Everything that exists here, all forms, are shadows of realities that exist there in the realm of ideas. For those who prefer a more theological language, you could say it is a spiritual realm or a metaphysical realm. Call it whatever you wish. But it seems that before things exist in the physical world, the idea that shaped them already exists in the metaphysical realm. This applies even to human creations. If you build a wooden chair, is it possible to do so without first thinking about it? Of course not. Naturally, you'll need to think about it in detail. So things are born in the subtle realm before they become concrete here. And a symbol works the same way. It is an idea that exists in this subtle realm, which often gives rise to a representation here below. So if you recall the Tao, Yin, and Yang, the Tao, which is one of the most well-known symbols in existence, it represents, in the physical world, an idea that belongs to this realm of ideas, which is the idea of harmony through opposition. What does that mean? That two completely different beings complement one another, the universe unfolds. In other words, when beings are true to their nature, when they complement each other, they form something much greater. They gain momentum. On their own, each one makes a very limited movement. Together they form a spinning wheel, and they move swiftly. In essence, Tao is harmony through opposition. It teaches us that in any area of life, we can create harmony through contrast and difference. It is a clear symbol, one of the well-known. So for symbolic language, one of the aspects we will emphasize is how it is created. Right here, it is always a symbol with a vertical relationship. We'll explore further. But first, let's recall some of the functions of symbols throughout history. In Rome, it is said that a coin was made with specific symbols on one side and the other. And, for example, if I'm about to embark on a long journey and am heading to a place that is very dangerous, I go to a friend whom I trust completely. I leave all my fortune with him, and I break that coin in half. And when I break that coin in half, I give him one half and say, when someone comes here with this password, which is the other half of the coin, you give them the money. Sometimes it was claimed by their children. Someone would arrive, present the password, and receive the money that had been entrusted. This was called symbols. In Latin, it was called symbolum. That is, It represented something that was hidden, at least hidden from sight, kept in the care of someone, with this idea of representation. And in Egypt, something very interesting, the hieroglyph that represents the word symbol is two hands joined forming a shell. It's like something that conceals a subtle reality, something you cannot see. There is something subtle and something that conceals it, that represents it in the world. And that is the symbol. Therefore, they offer us a very interesting clue, which we will explore shortly. It is the relationship between a symbol and an ideogram, a logo, or any similar form that exists. For example, the Tao and Yin and Yang. What is the difference between that? And a symbol like, for instance, the McDonald's M? What is the difference? They represent something that isn't physically present, don't they? Yes, they do. Is there a difference between them? Yes, there is. What is the fundamental difference we can identify between a logo, an ideogram, or anything of that nature, and a symbol? A symbol always communicates across two realms. It conveys things that are subtle, that belong to the realm of ideas. It conveys thoughts, feelings, and values. In other words, it builds a bridge from the subtle realm to the material world. It is always vertical in nature. It always brings something from a higher plane down to earth. Whereas ideograms, logos, or any similar elements, such as brands, establish a horizontal relationship. That is, the McDonald's M exists here on the physical plane, and the McDonald's sandwich exists on the physical plane. These are horizontal relationships. Everything is at the same level. So we have many of these brands, these logos, that make use of the idea of a symbol. They represent something greater, but they represent tangible, concrete things. A true symbol is vertical. It always brings something from a more subtle plane, and it introduces it into this material world through a representation, usually in a minimal, compact form. And just as symbols do this, myths do as well, in a slightly more elaborate way. They bring into this world something that does not originate here, as if it came from the realm of ideas, from the mental or spiritual plane. We bring it into our reality. So this is one of the essential aspects for us to understand what a symbol truly is. It is a relationship, always vertical. Now, imagine situations like this. I feel like a very alienated person. I've been feeling that way a lot lately. I find myself attached to trivial things, to superficial matters. When I reflect on my day, I've only focused on trivialities. Petty arguments, minor traffic jams, small issues at work. My entire life feels trivialized. There's nothing deeper within me. Then one day, someone shares with me the myth of the cave. Many human beings inside a dark cave, staring at a wall, watching shadows, and believing that it's real. My mind is blown. Guys, I am that person. The one staring at shadows, trivial, focused on superficial things. I don't look at anything real. I don't turn around to see what's illuminated by the sunlight. I only look at the shadows. I'm alienated in a world of illusions. You recognize yourself in that image. Now imagine how complex it would be. It would be for an artificial intelligence to establish a connection like this, unless that connection was created by someone in some written text, and you feed that text into its prompts, then it understands. But if no one had ever spoken about it, how could it possibly connect? The feeling of living a very superficial life with a myth created 2,400 years ago about people chained inside a cave, a connection that follows no formal logic, a completely symbolic connection. You see yourself in it and think you're exactly like that prisoner in the cave, only concerned with shadows, with nothing real in life. You recognize yourself in that image. This is something that artificial intelligence cannot construct. Artificial intelligence has a repertoire, and through an infinite combinatorial analysis of that repertoire, through associations, it brings forth things that are already within its repertoire. Logical deductions based on things within its repertoire. Connections of this kind do not follow formal logic. It is impossible for artificial intelligence to grasp this. In another moment, you observe the people around you, and you notice that everyone complains about everything. No one seems content with anything. in Brazil and across the world. All think everything is wrong, that the world change, yet no one is willing to change themselves. You look at the world and you see this. What a thing. You make this observation. Then one day, someone tells you a myth. Theseus, a great Greek hero, entered a labyrinth to slay a minotaur, a monster that dwelled within it. And he was only able to enter the labyrinth and defeat the minotaur because he carried an axe, a double-edged axe, which symbolized working inwardly and outwardly at the same time. When you think about it, this is the key to changing the world. You have to work inwardly and outwardly at the same time. People become alienated because they only agree to work on the outside. Look at the myth of humanity, at the way we are living today. People are doing exactly that. That's why we don't defeat monsters. We want to work only on the outside. We use only half of the axe, not the whole axe. We don't work inside and outside. Outside and inside. No minotaur is ever slain. Nothing truly positive or concrete is accomplished in the world. You look at it and realize, this is exactly the situation I'm living in. I suffer through it every day, and I see the people around me going through the same thing. It's exactly the same situation. Imagine how subtle the connection is, as I mentioned to you, unless someone has explained it. In some book that ended up in the repertoire of artificial intelligence, how would artificial intelligence establish a connection between you and your colleagues at work and a Greek myth about a man entering to slay a bull-headed monster? How would it make that kind of connection? If someone says it first, then yes, it can replicate what was said. But those are not explicit connections. And there are even more complex matters because the symbol is constantly being built. Many times this happens, we do this. There is a person I care about deeply, and for some reason I associated them with a particular song. When I hear that song, I remember that person. Do you know that feeling? You created a symbol for that person. What is that song? Sometimes it doesn't even have lyrics for you to reflect on. No, not even the lyrics matter. You clearly made an association indeed. It's very difficult to understand why you made that association. There's a subtlety in human representation that is very difficult to grasp. And beyond that, there is the oniric consciousness, the realm of dreams Carl Jung discussed so often. Sometimes dreams contain elements that are, imagine once again that I was feeling very superficial, connected only to fleeting things, only to small amusements, to the constant pursuit of modern possessions, only to trivial entertainments. I live for very transient things, very fleeting moments, and I feel that this brings me a certain sense of anguish. Then one day, I dream that there is a turtle in my backyard, and I sit down and just watch the turtle. It's a call for me to really care for what is enduring, not just for what is temporary. You look at it and realize that it's a response to the situation you're experiencing. You must focus on the things that endure. You must pay closer attention to what remains and not to what passes by fleetingly. How would artificial intelligence find a connection between you dreaming of a turtle and the superficiality of your life? And things like that are being created all the time. Our mind, in waking life and in the oniric consciousness during sleep, constantly creates these associations. And they're subtle. How do we recognize it? There is no formal logic in symbolic thinking. How do we reconstruct it? What paths did the mind take to arrive at this conclusion? There is no conventional or classical logic involved. There are no linked premises and conclusions. It's a leap. Symbolic reasoning is a leap. We don't know how the stages were formed. It is closely related to certain attributes that we will explore shortly, such as intuition and imagination. Symbolic language is deeply connected to them. Therefore, it becomes clear that this kind of thing is inaccessible to any form of artificial intelligence we currently have, and it will remain so for a long time. The future is uncertain. I don't know where we're headed, but I often find myself concerned about how we can attempt to reproduce something that we don't even understand within ourselves. We know almost nothing about consciousness. For instance, the definitions of consciousness are as contradictory as they can be. How can I reproduce something I don't understand myself? This calls for a very profound reflection. Much of what I'm going to talk about, I don't fully understand how it works within me. So how can I replicate it? When I speak about artificial intelligence in our work, I'm not referring to what we currently have. I'm not talking about chat. What's it called again? Chat GPT. I forgot its name. What a heresy. I'm not talking about Chat GPT because that is nothing more than a language processing program. It's still far from anything substantial. Someone feeds it a vast repertoire, and the program also performs a combinatorial analysis of that content, also identifies associations. Generally, after this word comes that one. It makes associations based on what's most conventional. So it's merely scanning the repertoire that was provided to it. It's simply a language association program. It's still very far from anything like what we're discussing. But the expectation and the fear that spreads throughout society is that one day, one of these machines will possess the same capabilities as a human. And that's why I'm going to further analyze some of these capabilities, all of them closely tied to symbolic vision, which is where we left off. All of it deeply connected to this realm of ideas, as Plato described it, or the realm of essences, if you prefer, in philosophical terms, or the spiritual plane, if you prefer, the subtle plane from which things originate and are reflected here. So let's continue. Internal perceptions. Here, and still referring to symbolic consciousness. Internal perceptions versus images, or symbolic narratives. Unless there's something in its repertoire that establishes this exact connection, AI will never be capable of making this kind of association. AI stands for artificial intelligence. We're still discussing symbolism. If the connection between the turtle and myself is superficial, it won't make the association unless someone informs it. Then you might say, now it understands because I told it. Then you dream of the camel or dream of something else entirely. Imagination is incredibly flexible and ever-changing. This realm of imagination, it cannot be predicted or fully encompassed. No one knows what will appear in your life and what kind of connection you'll make with it. No one knows what you will dream about. There are infinite possibilities. It cannot be anticipated or contained within a fixed repertoire. It won't work. Every day we create representations and associations for our internal perceptions. There can be no repertoire that encompasses all of this. At home, I have a very simple cup, but it has some paintings that belong to my grandmother. That cup holds tremendous significance for me. It brings back many beautiful memories of things she told me, many special moments. It's just a cup, but it's difficult to replicate. We are constantly forming connections like this with objects, with things. Unless you share the entire story behind it, it's a connection that can't be reconstructed. We are constantly creating symbols. One way we make sense of the world is by covering it with symbols. Not only symbolic language, but all the processes connected to an inner human reality are extremely difficult for artificial intelligence to replicate. There are also other dimensions beyond the symbolic perspective which are currently unattainable. It truly falls short. It's simply not within reach, at least not for a long time. It's not an easily attainable possibility. What else is there? Intuition. What is intuition? At some point, we all experience it in some way. We come to realize it is one of the most mysterious parts of human existence. I might sense that someone isn't doing well, then I call them and they're not. I might feel that I shouldn't go to a certain place today. And when you find out, you realize you truly weren't meant to be there. Maybe you're urgently called somewhere else. In any case, there are many possibilities that throughout our lives, we've already tested in small ways. Of course, fully developed intuition is still far from our reach, but we do experience intuitive phenomena. Where does intuition come from? How can it be reproduced? Intuition is a perception of forms in the realm of ideas, without precedence. That is, it had never happened before. I may have intuited something now in this very moment. No one had intuited that before. Or perhaps it was something similar. It involves a connection between an unknown realm, which is a subtle realm, and a concrete one. How could a machine possess intuition? How could it approach a subtle realm to grasp ideas and bring them into the world? Clearly, there is no perception of any subtle realm. There is no intuitive machine. It operates based on classical, mechanical logic within the concrete realm, from premises and conclusions, through associations and dissociations, by selecting parts forming relationships, through combinatorial analysis of elements within its repertoire. It functions in a mechanical manner. It is clear that accessing something beyond this realm, because this is what intuition is, means capturing information that is not logical, not in the concrete realm. It is something that comes from a subtle plane. It whispers that a certain action cannot or should not be taken. Intuition is typically, as a symbolic language, a form of vertical communication between planes. Artificial intelligence operates through logical deductions, combinatorial analysis, and associations derived from a given premise. It draws these associations from within its repertoire. How could it access the plane of ideas? It won't be aware such a plane exists. Subtleties for artificial intelligence. I don't know how such a bridge could be built, because it is extremely complex. For us, it is complex. Intuitions are rare for us, because they are difficult to access. Think how it is for machines. We are so materialistic, as I often say, that the fear that artificial intelligence will take our place, that machines will replace us, can be turned around. What's really happening is that we have long taken the place of machines. We have only developed a mechanical, material form of reasoning, deduced from certain premises, and based on a set of given information. How long has humanity been operating this way, using only a fraction of its true potential? So now AI arrives and surpasses this. We will need to move toward more creative endeavors. We were the ones occupying its place, not the other way around. There are many deeply human qualities that we still need to develop, and perhaps now we feel more called to do so. Intuition is, of course, another vertical connection, as is everything I'm going to speak about. It connects us to a more subtle plane. Machines will not grasp it. I don't know how they could. I have no idea. Imagination. Just like intuition, imagination and creativity bring into the world things that did not exist here before. Otherwise, it wouldn't be imagination. I studied logic for a time, and I really enjoy it. But logic is not creative. It only deduces what was already present. A classic example of logic. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. The final statement is not extraordinary. It's in the first one. Logic only makes explicit what was already there, not a creative process. Combinatorial analysis isn't creative either. It recombines elements that already existed. How does creation happen, if not through a process of imagination that takes flight, of creativity that soars, and discovers forms not yet come here? Imagination and creativity aren't based on existing deductions. As their names suggest, they work through unprecedented and disruptive creations. What is it? Something that did not yet exist. Not at all. When it is created, it leaves people confused. Where did it come from? Truly unprecedented and different things. They introduced elements that had no precedent. What was the precedent for the internet? Someone had been working on it. Yes, we had been trying to work with computing for a long time, but the internet? At a certain point, someone had a truly original idea. Absolutely disruptive. No one had imagined anything like it, that we would have the possibility of global communication the way we do now. Possibilities sometimes emerge as inventions that surprise us. Someone realizes that everyone has a car parked in their garage, and that this could become a more efficient and cost-effective way for society to get around. They invent Uber. Uber is highly creative. It is creative. It leverages society's existing resources to address society's challenges in a way more accountable. The entire innovative, disruptive concept had to originate from the realm of ideas. It didn't come from what already existed. There was nothing like it before. There truly was nothing like it. So creation and imagination necessarily arise from a connection with the realm of ideas. They are also vertical in nature. How can artificial intelligence innovate? It will deduce things that are logically connected to the initial premise. The first thing you say, that all men are mortal, it will deduce many conclusions, but it won't create anything truly new. If we see imagination and creativity being expressed in society, it's a sign that someone is tapping into that source. I had a logic teacher who had a profound impact on my youth. He was a truly fascinating person. He once shared a very thought-provoking story. He said that science places great value on reason, but in truth, it is more a child of intuition than of reason. He gave the example of Ptolemy's ideas. Conduct a combinatorial analysis of all he said. Lay out all the consequences of his ideas. Turn his ideas inside out. You still want to arrive at Copernicus' ideas from there. Copernicus didn't just build on what came before. He introduced a new element, something never been worldwide. So where did he get it from? And if you look at Galileo after Copernicus, it's not merely a combinatorial analysis of Copernicus' ideas. Galileo innovated. Where did it come from? Then came Isaac Newton, same thing in relation to Galileo. Then Albert Einstein, same thing in relation to Newton. It wasn't just a simple combinatorial analysis of what already existed. No, something absolutely unprecedented came into being. Something never existed in the world till then. And then suddenly it did. That is imagination, that is creativity. If they hadn't brought down something unprecedented, they wouldn't have been as brilliant as they were. Truly groundbreaking. They made a profound impact on the course of human history. Otherwise, they wouldn't have. Therefore, he said, science, valued for reason, comes from intuition. Because without it, science wouldn't advance the way it does. There are ideas that are absolutely unimaginable until one day, somehow, someone imagines them. That possibility enters someone's mind. Somewhere, that original idea originates. There is a Brazilian writer, Huberto Rodin, who used to say that this deserved a different term. It's not creation, it's elevation. That's the term he used, to express that we capture something from somewhere and bring it into the world for the first time. That was the expression he used to describe it, never revealed before. It exists in the realm of ideas, but it wasn't brought into this world. This is a vertical relationship. In some way, my mind was able to dive into the realm of ideas and bring that idea into the world. I dared to think further, to go beyond, and establish this connection between imagination and creativity that renews, transforms. Otherwise, we would have been repeating ourselves since the time of Ptolemy, performing combinatorial analysis. If you placed AI in a context, it would still be performing combinatorial analysis of Ptolemy's ideas. We would never arrive at Copernicus through that alone. There is no innovation without these two essential components, imagination and creativity, which rely on a vertical relationship. A relationship cannot be established, except by a human being who has access to it, an access that is not even constant. But from time to time, that insight, that spark, we perceive something. Each person in their own field facing a personal challenge. Suddenly the spark appears, and I arrive at a solution completely different. From all I had thought before, it's more effective. When you're trying to write something, that sentence you were looking for to explain an idea, each person in their own field has had these experiences of suddenly having an insight, a realization, something entirely new that comes from the realm of ideas. And this is something uniquely human. Creativity and imagination are as well. What else? Inspiration. This is quite amusing. Imagine that I write poetry. There's a seascape before me, darkening under the setting sun, and you're standing on the shore, the waves rolling in and out, the sky painted with that magnificent hue, ochre, reddish, and you bring all of that together, and suddenly that landscape inspires you to write a love poem. What does a love poem have to do with that landscape? What? How could you possibly connect the two? Yet you draw the love poem from that scene because the aesthetic of that landscape is so extraordinary that it lifts your consciousness to a higher plane. And once it reaches that level, it sees various forms of beauty and bring it back down here. It's an absolutely unusual connection. What is it that inspires us to create beautiful things? Inspiration is a curious phenomenon. I was inspired to write this letter, to compose this text, to speak to someone about something. Where did that inspiration come from? I was watching something like children playing. What do children playing have to do with what you're talking about? I don't know, but it inspired me. Do you see how it's a difficult connection to make? It doesn't follow logic. Inspiration is also a reality that cannot be reproduced through logic, through combinatory analysis, or through association. And yet it is one of the human inner forces, one of the qualities that define the human being. Let's move on. Ethics. Ethics, really? You might say that a country has what we call positive law, which is a set of laws. I input these laws into the computer. I present them to the AI, and it will tell me whether I am acting within the law or outside of it. It can simplify process. But if you're not just simply dealing with legality, if you're speaking about, as the law itself mentions, a just naturalism, a natural right which comes from nature, from the laws of the universe. For example, at a certain moment, I believed that I was acting with dignity, fairness, and goodness. In that moment, I was aligned with universal principles. How could I possibly know that? What is a grasp about natural law? The kind that flows from nature itself? What understanding of natural ethics? I feel that I am being fair, good, and ethical in this moment. Where does that come from? It comes from a personal sensitivity, which is rooted in my values, in my worldview. How could it deduce that? If you were to ask it, was what I did ethical? How would it respond? It has no way of reproducing these internal perceptions, the space where the connection between an action and ethics is formed. And that space doesn't exist in legal code. I simply encountered someone in distress, and I helped her in that moment. Was it ethical? It's not written code, but you feel that it was. Where does that feeling come from? How could artificial intelligence deduce something like that? That too is an internal perception. True ethics, not just the codified law, not what is written in legislation, but the genuine ethics that arises from an intelligent awareness, an intelligent perception of how we relate to life in the most human way possible. This kind of perception cannot be replicated by a machine. It simply cannot be reproduced by a machine. How could one simulate that? It will never understand why we chose one thing or another on principles. What principles? What are those principles? Even if you say it was justice, it will search its database for what is said about justice, but it won't truly grasp what you personally understand as justice. You have your own understanding of justice it cannot comprehend. It has no way of grasping these actions that are inspired by the laws of nature. There is simply no way. That's why true ethics is extremely difficult to embed within a machine. How would it judge such things? It can judge what is legal, but when it comes to what's fair, that's unlikely. What else? Aesthetics. Aesthetics is a fascinating concept. Beauty is one of the most complex things in the world because it is incredibly subtle and multifaceted, and we can't explain it very well. I mentioned that if we were to input into the machine's repertoire a list of things considered beautiful, a manual on how to create beauty in painting and sculpture, here and there, it still wouldn't encompass all the realities where aesthetics emerge. Sometimes you witness an accident and you stop your car to help. You administer first aid, covered in dirt, in that terrible situation. See something beautiful in it, a human doing everything they can to save another person's life. Isn't that right? We perceive it beautiful, a beautiful act. How could a machine find something like that beautiful? There are connections it simply cannot make. Beauty is deeply creative. It constantly creates meaning. We look at a scene that seems ordinary, that has no worth. We say beautiful. I place a leaf there, a leaf being carried along by the rainwater. Something simple like that. And you think, how beautiful. A dry leaf floating in water. Try explaining that to a computer. Dry leaf in water is beautiful. It might respond a dry leaf in a dry place isn't beautiful. It's a lot to explain to a machine. There are many details. Take these two scenes, an elderly person with her hands resting on her lap, and a child comes and places her hands on top. To us, that holds 1,000 meanings. It's as if the past is connecting with the future in the present moment. It's a touching, deeply moving scene. How could a computer understand something like that? Why is it beautiful? What are the parameters? What manual do I consult to find the measurements and proportions that tell me it's beautiful? It doesn't work this way. Aesthetics is fleeting and multifaceted. It's a uniquely human quality. Sometimes it's something simple, yet we find beauty. And logically, it's extremely difficult to replicate. A beautiful gesture is often something small, yet it touches us deeply, defies explanation. It doesn't fit into any manual. So aesthetics is also a complex matter. Beauty is unusual and subtle. You can see there's so much to it. Much of it lies beyond our grasp. It's not just the process of consciousness, which is already very complex. There are many ways in which human beings perceive, and they're very difficult to access. Truly difficult. Mystique. Now we're entering truly complex territory. If you define mystique as thinking about God, speaking about God, then it's likely that AI can generate a great deal of content because there's a vast amount written on the subject, a wealth of literature. It can gather all of it and produce a text for you because that literature was fed into it. Now, mysticism is not just that. Mysticism is the sacralization of life, the sacralization of a moment that may be completely unexpected. I'll share a scene here to take a look. The ceremonial of life that can arise in a silent walk at dusk. You're just simply walking leisurely with someone at dusk, and you feel that it's a sacred moment, one you will never forget. That silence, that fading afternoon, and the hand of the person you love in yours. You realize that it is a ceremonial moment. How will you explain to a computer that any moment in your life, no matter how simple, can become ceremonial? That quickly something breaks free from banality, and you feel that you are living a sacred moment. In the simplest scenes of life, how is it going to understand this? There's a philosopher from the last century, Mircea, who said this phrase, "The sacred is to give meaning." And suddenly something gives such profound meaning to our life that we become paralyzed. Wait a minute, what do you mean? What is this? What is it offering me? Explain to me how a machine could understand that a moment has become sacred to you. What kind of argument could be added to its repertoire? How would it recognize that? If the sacred can be anything, depending on how you approach it, depending on the relationship your consciousness has with it, anything that marks a special moment. In the presentation, somewhere else in it, included situation. Imagine you're walking and suddenly you have a wonderful idea. You realize something you had never noticed before. In that moment, you see a stone on the ground. You look at that stone and say, I will take this with me as a token of this moment. So I can forever remember the moment I found something so meaningful in life. And you form a relationship with that stone. Try explaining that to a computer. Try explaining it. The human being is incredibly rich in subtlety, far more than we can even imagine. Love and other emotions. This is even more complex. There is nothing more prolific in the world than writings about love. Everything, include poetry, include its entire scope. Love is always unique. It will always manifest in a different way. This is the story of the stone I just shared with you. I love the stone. It appeared precisely at the moment I needed it. Why does a human being love a stone? One might try to explain it through the lens of passion. through the connection between two human beings or between two living beings. But there's no way to fully grasp why someone would love a stone. Love is incredibly subtle. It can arise in completely unexpected situations. You can love a moment, an object. You can love a state of mind that you were able to capture. There are countless subtleties within emotions as a whole. Love, even more so. It won't be able to define it. If you try to make a computer generate a concept of love that encompasses all the possibilities of love, it will become overwhelmed as we don't know what all the possibilities of love are. I believe that most aspects of love remain unknown to us. We tend to practice the most basic form of love in personal relationships. The greater part of love is still a mystery to us. What could it say to a computer? There are nuances it simply won't be able to grasp. Intelligence. Call me crazy, but artificial intelligence doesn't possess intelligence. It truly doesn't. What it has is associative mathematics, combinatorial analysis, as I mentioned before, mathematics based on associations. It plays a game of words it has seen linked together, so it reproduces them in combination. Therefore, it doesn't have access to genuine intelligence. But what is true intelligence? According to a classical definition, the word intelligence comes from intelligere, that is, inter eligere, to choose among the options that life presents to you. The one that is most aligned with who you are, with your sense of purpose, with your fulfillment, to choose the best possible path. One that most enhances your humanity, the one that fulfills you as a human being. Therefore, intelligence requires that you understand what the inner purpose of that person is. In my vision of an ideal life, I aspire a just fraternal human being. So, among the things happening right now, I choose to act in that way. Why? It is aligned with justice and fraternity. If you don't know that, if you don't know what my ideal is, what my purpose is, how will you judge my actions? How will you know if they were intelligent or not? How will you understand? There's no way. Unless I explain to you everything I aim to achieve, even then it will be complicated because it doesn't know what you understand by justice and fraternity. It will rely on common sense. So there are two ways for a person to make choices in life. Randomly, based on what is currently trending, this is very easy for artificial intelligence. You simply tell it what's trending. It will deduce what everyone is thinking. If you are following trends, part of the masses, it knows what you are doing. But if you act guided by a sense of mission, it has no way of knowing. What does it mean to act with a mission spirit? It means having a goal. So I will make choices that bring me closer to that goal. It's like building a table. This is my mission. I go to the market and buy a saw, nails, wood, and some other necessary items. I will buy everything that relates to my mission, which is to build a table. If I want to build myself as a human being, I will also make life choices that support me and gather materials so that I can build myself as a human being. If you don't know what I consider to be a human being, if you don't know my ideal, you can't justify my choices. You can't recognize what is intelligent and what is not. Therefore, intelligence itself, in its most complete definition, cannot be replicated by what we call artificial intelligence. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It makes no choices. It processes what is given to it and produces a synthesis. To conclude our idea, artificial intelligence offers us a collection of human culture with unimaginable combinatorial analysis. This is interesting because it brings everything together with many elements that can be truly fascinating. It integrates discoveries from all over the world. It can generate intriguing outcomes. But there are many human functions that it cannot replicate. Many indeed. More than we tend to imagine. It offers you a vast encyclopedia unlike anything that has ever existed. It presents a panorama of human culture interconnected, compared, and contextualized. But human culture cannot be halted. It must continue to be built and nurtured. If human culture becomes paralyzed, it turns into stagnant water and soon it begins to decay. Water must keep flowing. And culture is the same. Culture must be expanded. It must be renewed. Who will expand and renew culture? These men here, those who renew human culture, are individuals with symbolic vision, people of imagination, creativity, intuition, and love. These are the individuals who renew culture. Therefore, the culture it offers is a product of human beings, something it cannot imitate. It is not a creator of culture. The creators of culture possess human qualities that it is incapable of replicating, and it relies on those qualities to sustain itself. This echoes what has often been said about artificial intelligence. It has no soul. Perhaps what we are truly saying is just that. It lacks all these flexible and subtle human attributes, which we say emanate from the human soul, because it has no connection to the subtle. Its mindset is concrete and limited to what it has been programmed with. This is the reality we face now. Then you might ask me, will it always be this way? I do not know. I do not know. Will artificial intelligence one day be capable of these things? At this point, it seems absurd to me, but I don't know. Human beings are capable of achieving things that are difficult for us to comprehend. I cannot say it will never happen. But the truth is that what we currently have is still very far from the capabilities of a human being. Then people say, well, it will replace my job. If you lack imagination, if you are not creative, if you are not intuitive, if you do not have a symbolic vision, if you are not loving, if you function mechanically, yes, it can replace you. But individuals who possess these subtle capacities stand out because machines have no way of replicating them. So more and more, this challenges us to inhabit a truly human space, to cultivate what makes us unique in the world as human beings. All of these subtle qualities, of which I've shared just a small sample. So whether it will ever reach that point, I do not know. But for now, what we have is still very far from it. The wonders we make, as we will discuss during the book launch, in a magic flute that can decode everything contained in Mozart's work as it relates to human life, or in a divine comedy, the same applies. That is the richness of symbolism found in so many works. Of course, the divine comedy must be included in the repertoire of AI, and it can tell you all written in it, but it cannot tell you what the symbols mean, what their relationship is with life, that it will not tell you. You, if you are capable of such flights, rising up, dwelling in the realm of ideas, you will be able to perceive it. This is something exclusively human.